Welcome to Extraordinary Vets, where every career tells a story. I'm your host, Donna Harris. I'm a veterinarian at Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicine and a futurist. To understand the future, we need to look at who is creating it today. Our guest this episode makes me want to sit up a little bit taller in my chair because we are indeed honored to welcome back to Michigan State Dr. Justin Schlanser. I said that right?
You did.
Excellent. Dr. Schlanser, I'm going to read this because I'll get these titles wrong. Dr. Schlanser is a colonel in the U.S. Army. He is commander of the Public Health Command East Division. And two of the most important reasons that we have him a guest today is because he's chief of the U.S. Army Veterinary Corps and an MSU alum. Go Green.
Go White.
Welcome, Dr. Schlanser. We're glad you're here. We have two veterinary students with us today, first time having guests in the studio. And they are recipients of the Health Professions Scholarship Program, which is the Army Scholarship for veterinary students. We have Second Lieutenant Shelby Friend, a third-year student, and Second Lieutenant Selena Gomez, not the actress, a second-year student. We'll give them both a chance to chime in with some questions at the end. So welcome to everybody that's here. All right, so first of all, if you're back in Michigan, I've got you in person in the studio. That's kind of nice. It really is nice to have somebody right here. So let's start at the top here. What's your typical day look like? Or do you have a typical day?
Oh, that's a great question. So first of all, awesome to be back here on campus. Incredible to be back, at Michigan State. I always love to come home, and this is really a great opportunity to come home and share time with not just the students but yourself, and also be back in the building. That really meant so much to me in my career. So I appreciate that very, very much. Probably I need to talk about a typical day. I need to talk first a little bit about what the job titles you mentioned and what those mean. So as the chief of the U.S. Army Veterinary Corps, essentially what that means is I am the leader of all the vets in the U.S. military. So we have veterinarians that are almost all of them are in the U.S. Army as part of the U.S. Army Veterinary Corps, which is the Corps of Veterinarians that supports U.S. Army medicine and supports the defense of the United States through our veterinary medicine in that forum. We have about 475 or so active duty veterinarians that serve in the Veterinary Corps, or probably about another 230 in the reserves, and they all come together along with about another 1,500 or so soldiers who are our veterinary technicians and our veterinary food inspectors to form the veterinary service, of which the Veterinary Corps is the officer component to that, which is our veterinarians.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're just not in charge of veterinarians. There's veterinary technicians, veterinary nurses, other veterinary professionals.
Absolutely.
In the Army. Okay,
Absolutely.
Didn't know that.
Yep.
All right.
With that job, so that job has a very wide scope, because as the Army is the only organization within the military that provides veterinary services, we provide that to all other branches of service. So Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all receive their veterinary support from us in the U.S. Army.
I also did not know that. I thought there were veterinarians in the Navy.
There are no veterinarians in the Navy in a commissioned capacity wearing the uniform like myself.
Okay.
You will find the occasional veterinarian serving in the Air Force, and they serve in the Air Force in a strictly public health-based role. So they may end up doing very, how shall I say, my human colleagues get on me when I say human medicine kind of tasks. But the veterinarians in the Air Force do serve in that capacity too. There's far fewer of them, and much less, only, less than 20 usually, and usually it's a very small corps in the Air Force. But on the Army side, we have the biggest contingent. It sounds like 400 sounds like a lot, but we're actually one of the smallest corps in the U.S. Army. So we're small. We have to economize and support an entire military, of which is over 1 million military personnel. So really, really big job there. And at my current role as the chief of the Veterinary Corps, I get to interact across all aspects of defense to really look at how we integrate with human medicine, how we integrate with the different branches, how we do all the different things we do to protect both animal health, public health, and safeguard research in the military space.
Now I'm starting to put some things together because I saw that you also, which we'll get to, but you also have training in One Health, preventative health, which is the intersection of the environment, humans and animals. And that makes sense now when you describe your role as Chief Veterinary Officer.
Yeah, and that actually goes to my other role. So I'm kind of an individual who wears two hats at the same time. So my office and my day-to-day job, I'm kind of the veterinary corps chief by night, but during the day, I'm what you mentioned before, which is the commander of Public Health Command East. So essentially, I have direct agency over all the veterinary personnel east of the Mississippi River. And so they're the ones that on a daily basis I move and direct, where the other ones I lead through influence and also through some of the bigger strategic future-based programs that we look at in veterinary medicine. And in that realm, I also have a very big One Health component because I also command a series of individuals in Public Health Command who are environmental science officers, who are industrial hygienists, who are entomologists even. They're also within my scope in Public Health Command East, and we do a very holistic view of public health as in a One Health capacity to support essentially all of those military personnel in Public Health Command East, which is east of the Mississippi River.
Well, that's a lot of jobs. You mentioned entomology. We could do a whole podcast on that because as a futurist, I've been looking at how bugs can be a protein source.
Interesting.
And where's the veterinary role when we start consuming bugs? We won't even go there because that's a whole nother podcast episode. So let's go back a little bit. You grew up in Michigan, right?
I did, yeah. So I grew up in Northville, Michigan, down by Detroit. Okay. And I was always kind of the kid who went around turning over rocks to see what was under them.
Bugs.
And doing that stuff. Oh yeah, bugs again. But always had a soft spot for animals, and always that was always something that I felt drawn to. And as I went through, I knew obviously from a young age that veterinary medicine was a thing for me. It was something that was kind of an undertone in my family as well. I had a cousin who was very into veterinary medicine and then ended up going into a different direction. But I had a lot of experiences through her that were really unique when I was young. And then obviously when I came to high school, I was, full in on going that direction and began volunteering and such. The unique part about it is I come from a very robust military family. And so almost several generations before me had been military in some experience. I have many West Point graduates. My grandfather was a 2-star general.
Wow.
My brother is a West Point graduate. And so I was, the one person in the family who, for whatever reason, I had to make that decision. I was not going military because I wanted to do veterinary medicine. And so So
it never crossed your mind you could combine the two?
Never crossed my mind at all. And then I came to Michigan State, obviously, with for my undergraduate with veterinary medicine in mind. And when I was finally accepted to this great school here to begin my veterinary career, I very quickly after that got an email from my father who basically said, "Hey, I was looking online.
Oh.
Did you know that there's this veterinary corps in the Army?" And I was like, I did not know that. And kind of the rest was history. I went in and started looking into their programs, and that was real, to me, I think, kind of a natural thing to meld the two worlds back together again as I was going
So
forward.
Back when you went to veterinary school, you were also in the Army.
I was.
You married the two in veterinary school?
I did. So I was actually, I did the Health Profession Scholarship Program as well.
That's what it was called?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a great program. Folks come into the Army essentially two ways. They come in, or veterinarians, I should say, come into the Army essentially two ways. The first is through the Health Profession Scholarship Program, of which we have two individuals here with us, which is great. The Health Profession Scholarship Program is a scholarship that's given to all health professionals in the Army, doctors, dentists, veterinarians, and it essentially pays for tuition in exchange for coming to serve and start your career in the military once you graduate. And it's a really, really great deal. It gives you a stipend to live on. It pays for books and supplies. It pays
That's
your
a big
tuition,
deal.
especially with the way tuition costs are now
Absolutely.
compared to when we were in school, Donna. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and so that's a really, really great deal. And it also allows you some opportunities while you're in veterinary school to come and actually see what the military is all about, train with us, because in many ways, you know, the military is, I always like to say, military is a totally different type of veterinary practice. Just like you have small animal practice and large animal practice and government practice. Military veterinary medicine, military veterinary practice is its own type of practice. We have our own unique nuances to what we do and how we do our veterinary medicine in the military that make it different, and that's really important. The other way folks come into the military is through direct commission, which is essentially as they walk into a Army medical recruiter. They come in, they say, I'd like to join the military, and the medical recruiter looks at all their requirements, sets them up for a physical and everything else they need, and then they come into the military that way. And we have a lot of veterinarians that come in, and as the chief of the Corps, I actually like that because we get a lot of veterinarians from the Health Profession Scholarship, young, eager, interested people that come in out of school with great training and new knowledge. And then we get another great cohort of people from our direct commission, which are usually folks that have been practicing for a little while and want to change and are looking for something a little different. And they come in bringing with them kind of their experience and knowledge too. And I think it makes for a great mix within our service.
I love that. One of the audiences that we're hoping to reach with the podcast is veterinarians that are out early in their career where they look around and say, this isn't quite what I want, or they've changed. I want something different. And so what you're saying is they can look at the Army
Absolutely
as a possibility when they go. What about somebody who has been in the Army or is in the Army or for whatever reason and says, oh, now I want to go be a veterinarian? Is there a place for them?
So we actually have several programs that kind of work for that. We have, for example, there are many, how shall I say this, many Army veterinary technicians who have gone and gotten accepted to vet school and come back in the Army once again as Army veterinarians. So there's more than at least a handful I can name right off the bat, but several that have done that path.
Okay.
And so that's one way to do it. This year, we just recently had some biomedical science officers or biochemists that also are taking part in a program for the first time. They're going to start veterinary school. These are individuals that actually have PhDs in biochemistry that are now going back to veterinary school, and then they're going to come back to the Army after they go to veterinary school, and they're going to be a DVM PhD at that time, right?
That is a lot of brain power.
That is. Well, and that's one of the things about the military I love too, is that, you know, we have a great cohort of young general practitioners, but in the military, the culture is such that we want you to get specialty training. We want you to do specialty training in public health or preventive medicine or one of the clinical specialties, emergency critical care, internal medicine, those things, or go into our research arm and get specially trained as a pathologist or a laboratory animal vet, because those specialty skills, I think, are one of the biggest benefits and how we provide our service to the entire military moving forward.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue back to your career. Mm-hmm. So you went to veterinary school with the Health Profession Scholarship. You got out for how long? How long were you out? Because then you came back to Michigan State, and that's where you and I met. So how long were you out before you came back to do your residency here?
So I wasn't even out. So that's
weren't?
So this is one of the big benefits and one of the big programs that is really a flagship program in the U.S. Army Veterinary Service, which is what's called our Long-Term Health Education and Training Program, or LTHET. Full disclosure, though, sometimes I speak in acronyms. If I say an acronym you don't know, feel free to correct me.
I will.
We get into that habit in the government. So, but what this program is when you enter the military service, you do First thing you do is you go into what's called our first year graduate program, which is an internship program which has the goal of training you to become a military veterinarian, essentially showing you what military veterinary medicine is, like I mentioned before, what that type of practice is. Because within our practice, you have a whole significant part, not just of animal medicine, but also food safety and public health that you have to know, and many other intricacies of just being part of the Army culture are there. After you do that first internship, you go to your first job, your first what we call duty site, which is usually a military base somewhere in the continental United States, although it varies. And then the next assignment, this is about by the time you're about maybe 7 years in, or 5, 6, 7 years in, you do a second assignment where we usually send you overseas sometimes. And that doesn't necessarily mean deployed to a combat zone. That means maybe you're doing veterinary medicine in Germany, or you're doing veterinary medicine in Japan or somewhere. And then at that point, you're eligible to apply for this long-term health education and training program. And what this program does is it essentially sends you back to school. You don't ever leave the Army, but you're essentially back being a student again. And we send you back to universities, usually school of choice. So you get to go to a university and get trained in a specialty skill. And it's a competitive selection. Army veterinarians compete amongst themselves for those positions, and we work with them. And so every year we send a number of Army veterinarians back to do residency in the clinical specialties like surgery, critical care. We send individuals out to do PhD programs around universities and in the sciences and in public health. We send individuals to get just master's degrees in public health, an MPH or otherwise, and also with the goal of them being preventive medicine experts afterwards. And then the military maintains 2 of its own residency programs. One is in pathology through the Joint Pathology Center, and the other is its laboratory animal medicine residency program, which is actually hosted throughout our major research institutes, usually in the national capital area. And those 2 programs, the lab animal and the pathology program, are still the most successful programs for generating a board certified individual on the end in terms of
that's great.
Their graduates. And so I took part of that program, and that program was great because for me, my school of choice was to bring me back here to Michigan State.
Okay.
And I did kind of 2 things at once. I used the academic time I had to complete my MPH through the College of Human Medicine here.
I wondered how you did that. Okay, so you did that at the same time as your residency.
And then my residency here was with Dr. Jim Sikarsky and Dr. Donna Harris in Zoo and Wildlife Medicine. And I also had a big pathology component. I spent a lot of hours over at the Diagnostic Center for Population Animal Health, doing wildlife work there with the Michigan DNR team there. Really a incredible residency program. At the end of that residency program, I actually went out and I got board certification in preventive medicine. And so I did my board certification afterwards in preventive medicine. But it was really great to be home here for a few years and learn under those great individuals in that vein.
Yeah, that's where you and I met for the first time, because Jim Sikarsky was instrumental in my early career as I did a lot of wildlife. And then he's pulled me aside and said, hey, I got this resident. And I needed speakers in a class talking about alternative careers. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So you came in a couple times. I appreciate that, because the students need to be exposed to all the things that are out there for sure.
Surely.
So you're like that. So you did your zoo and wildlife residency and your MPH to the Human Med School to get your board certification in preventative medicine. And I can see now where that all kind of works together. But I don't quite see the connection with the zoo and wildlife.
Sure. So the military has really a very unique view, in my view, on the One Health concept. In the Army and across all the services, you are brought into kind of this One Health mentality from the very beginning because of a couple of reasons. First of all, you work alongside physicians and dentists and nurses and physical therapists and environmental science officers from the moment you come in to the military. So you're with those individuals, you're learning from them, you're collaborating, and you can see places where there's common ground. The other part of it too is that just like with military veterinary medicine, we really emphasize you always keep one eye is on the animal, one eye is always on the soldier and the individual we're trying to protect. And so you're always making that link, and not to criticize the veterinary profession as a whole, but very often it can be very patient-centered and very much on that patient and the companion animal aspect of it. In military veterinary medicine, we're always looking at the health of the animal and the health of the soldier at the same time, because ultimately, that's the reason for our goal is we're here to protect the United States and the ideals it stands for. And we do that by protecting the health of the soldiers. We do that by being a part of the National Veterinary Defense System. We do that by working with all those different agencies across the spectrum of veterinary medicine to be there. And so when I came into wildlife medicine, one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with, that we're still dealing with today, and which I think is a big future issue as well, is disease and emerging disease at the human-wildlife interface, how that's going to affect the future of veterinary medicine. We had obviously, we all went through the COVID period, and that was kind of indicative of that. And so that was one of my major links to being able to study wildlife and wildlife disease at the same time that I was also studying public health. And all that came together.
So are you watching as climate change changes vector movement and zoonotic diseases? Are you watching that as well in the Army?
We are. There are some specific areas, like, for example, one of the areas that we are watching very closely is the Arctic region, because as climate increases, or as the temperature increases, we're starting to see things like permafrost beginning to thaw. And we have some very unique research institutes that we've actually reopened up in places like Alaska to start looking at those effects. Like, are there pathogens that are unfreezing that we don't want to unfreeze in theory?
Right.
And how does that figure into it? And then also, of course, climate change does affect us in the fact that as temperatures increase, we have tropical diseases now with a much bigger range than we had before. And if you look back through history, one of the biggest issues plaguing our forces, especially in areas like the Pacific in the past, were tropical diseases, tropical medicine, those things, vector-borne or otherwise, that are there, that can really put soldiers out of commission for a long period of time and be long-lasting for them. And these are things that are really affected by that we are in many ways researching across the globe right now.
So veterinarians can take a key part in that. If somebody's really interested in that, I can see where the Army would be a great career fit.
Absolutely. We actually have, right now is a very unique time in the Veterinary Corps. We have right now 2 of our overseas laboratories. We have actually overseas laboratories, both associated with the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, which is headquartered in DC, but 2 overseas laboratories, one in Thailand and one in Africa, in Kenya. And both of these laboratories are run and directed by veterinary corps officers. So they're run and directed by veterinarians. And they're not just looking at veterinary diseases. Right. I mean, these are looking at tropical medicine diseases. They're looking at HIV/AIDS. They're looking at a lot of problems of the population as a whole. And right now we have veterinarians in charge of those laboratories, and those veterinarians have been so successful that when those veterinarians rotate out of those tours and return home, they're getting replaced by other veterinarians taking over and continuing to direct those laboratories. So really
wow. Those sound like podcast guests.
Absolutely.
Because they really, I mean, that's such a unique career, something worth exploring.
Well, and that's what I tell whenever I speak to young officers like the 2 we have in the room. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I often tell them, and that I'd recommend to you too as well, Donna, is speaking to one veterinary corps officer is not enough, because each of us has had such a different career path and we've all traveled to different places. We've all been part of different things. And so as you do it, speaking to each one of them, you'll get a completely different
Right.
experience. Most of those folks who command those labs, they have a research background, so they've been
Okay.
doing this for a while too, so they have a really unique perspective as well on where they are.
So you mentioned travel. Talk to me about your travel.
Oh, my
Where have
goodness.
you been? What's your favorite place? Tell me about that. I mean, the Army must give you opportunities to travel that you wouldn't have had in other careers.
No, I couldn't have said it better, because I grew up in Michigan, and I didn't travel a whole lot, outside of family vacations and things like that when I was a kid. I mean, we had some travels, the occasional Caribbean vacation or something, very few and far between, but I did not know travel until I came into the U.S. Army, and so it was really amazing for me. And I think that the travel that the Army gives you is an incredible opportunity for an individual to learn culturally and learn and grow as a person. Like you're going to be doing great Army things wherever you go, but each place I've gone, each place I've traveled, I've learned something more about myself doing it. So when I came in the Army, my first job right out of the Army was Fort Irwin, California, which is in the desert of California, middle of the desert, really hot. It's one of the places where we all, we drive our tanks around, that kind of thing. And so I was out there as the base veterinarian, got to stay there. Really unique because we had a desert tortoise mission. So we had to be able to keep...
As a pet?
No, as there was an endangered...
Oh, okay.
So as a side note, one of the unique things about the military is that military lands, we're charged by law, by Congress, to maintain and conserve the lands that we use for military exercises. And so to do that includes having very robust programs to look after endangered species and looking after other entities. There are actually some endangered species that their entire range is within a military base.
That must feel good for you as a conservation person.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
To have that part of the Army's mission.
Absolutely. And so we help that when we can. We have other great professionals, biologists and others that help us with that. So, I mean, it's really, really unique. But Fort Irwin, California was the first site. I was there. And once again, just like this military practice thing, my job was mostly to take care of military working dogs, which are a huge protection asset for our soldiers. Take care of private pets that were of our soldiers and families that were there too.
Okay.
It's a great way to make sure our soldiers and families are ready and they have their pets taken care of, but it also is a great way for us to maintain our veterinary skills. And then also doing food safety and public health, rabies control, those kind of things on the installation were there too. So I did that for a couple years. Then I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina afterwards, and I got into the special operations community. We actually have veterinarians in the special operations community as well. And they work with our special forces teams and groups, and they also work in civil affairs and other organizations which are that do special things for the military. And so I worked at Fort Bragg for 2 years. And then I was fortunate enough to be selected to be part of the 75th Ranger Regiment, which, if you think of the term, the U.S. Army Rangers, that's who they are.
Yeah.
And that was an incredible job because it was an incredible job in an elite unit of really professional soldiers. Very hard. Yeah, absolutely. Very hard position. Both physically and otherwise, although I was younger then. But physically, yes, hard, but also the unique thing about it was that was happening at the height of the global war on terror. And so we were very busy, but also it was very important to take care of those working dogs, help build a program and allow them to protect the soldiers they were there to protect, which is great. After that, I went and did my residency. And then out of my residency, I was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, again, back to Georgia, and I was there as a deputy commander for a public health command. So kind of what I do now, but kind of the second banana in that rung, but helping run operations all around the southeastern U.S. in terms of that. And then following that, I got to actually go to Italy for 2 years.
Then you got overseas.
Yeah, and I got my overseas.
And your world gets bigger, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, and so it was really, like I said, a transformative experience because I was there. In Italy, you get to live out among the Italian population. So I was there. My neighbors were Italian, But the other part of that job, which was incredible, is my job there. I was actually the vet for U.S. Army Africa. And so we were doing programs in Africa the entire time. So I got to live in Italy, travel to Africa all the time. Really, really a great
Wow,
great
I should have been in
opportunity.
the Army, dang it.
I know it has your background too, yes.
Yeah.
After that, I then got into command, which in the military is being a commander, like I am now in the military, is kind of like being a CEO.
Okay.
It's similar to that. You are in charge of soldiers. It's an authority position in the military where you are directing the operations of a military unit, and you're also taking care of all the people in your charge. It's kind of the quintessential thing about leadership in the military and the
Sure.
Army especially. So then I commanded a veterinary unit. We actually have deployable veterinary units in the Army. These are units that can actually pick up, go anywhere in the world, establish a veterinary hospital, which can do up to what's called Role 3 care, which is essentially we could do surgery in the field, we can do minor rehabilitation in the field, and hospitalization for military working dogs in the field. And it can also deploy and set up a food laboratory and also do food safety for a big force in the field too. So highly versatile, and had a great time doing that. I was actually in Washington State for that, which was a beautiful place to be as well. And then after that, I came to San Antonio. I actually got a chance to work think about One Health capacity. I got to work actually for the U.S. Army Dental Corps for a year, which was really unique. So I got to spend a year, with the dentists.
I don't know if I could do that. I don't know. First of all, it's people.
It is.
I'm not and then teeth.
Yes. It's very
But
eye-opening.
it makes your world bigger again.
Absolutely. And we have a very close relationship with the dentists in the Army as well.
Good.
Just because of similar career pathways, similar things too. And then after my time in the Dental Corps, I actually had to go back to school again. I went to something called the Army War College, which is a one-year program to teach us strategic thought and strategic thinking for Army senior leaders. It's kind of like schooling on your way to becoming an executive leader in the Army. And so now, as I'm, in my position now, I'm a commander again, so Public Health Command East, and also as the chief of the Veterinary Corps. Now I'm doing basically setting the future direction, strategic direction for Army veterinary medicine, and really in many ways military veterinary medicine across all the services going forward in the next short period.
I know that you and I talked before we got on the podcast about our mutual interest in the future, because futurists look at 10, 20, 50 years out, and of course the military needs to do that. So when you think of the veterinary profession, or maybe just the veterinary profession within the Army, what do you think our biggest challenges are 10, 20, 50 years out?
No, absolutely. So we have this question often in the military, is how do we modernize? People think of the military as a very, static organization based on, tradition. And while it is that, it is a ever-changing organization. We are always changing, always transforming, because we're always trying to be sure that we are keeping up with the next threat or the next thing that's on the horizon. It's funny you mentioned that, because I talk to my soldiers in the Army Veterinary Service quite a bit. With this, I think probably the biggest change that we're experiencing right now is tech. I think the way that tech is advancing so rapidly right now, I think that is going to have profound implications for the veterinary profession. So even in clinical practice, many can see how things just like AI scribes have changed how we do veterinary practice in a small animal practice, for example. We are wondering, how does tech look for us into the future for veterinary medicine? And I think that's going to be one of the biggest influencing factors, because we have to be able to do things quickly. The military, we often have to make very quick decisions. And also it influences those we support. So as tech gets better, is there a day in the future where we may find something that is technically better than a dog's nose for sniffing out things like explosives or narcotics?
I can't imagine.
It's hard to think about, but at the same time, I I don't discount it, because I
Right,
feel that with
right.
the pace of how things are moving, that could be a future we're looking at. You're right. Right now, we're still, dogs are still far superior as of this taping, but in the future we don't know, and so that's how we have to really look out 10 years. And the sad thing to say is that in many ways, I hate to say it, I think we're very bad at predicting the future sometimes if you look at history.
I think we all are.
Yeah.
But the veterinary profession in particular. But one thing they teach us as we're looking at future study and foresight is, if the first thing you think to say is, I can't believe it, or that can't you need to stop yourself, because that means it would be possible.
Absolutely.
And it might be, just like you did when I said, I can't imagine a dog's nose. Because now they're training dogs to sniff out cancer and Parkinson's and things like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
that's really interesting.
But yeah, I really, one of the things I think about a lot is that, I guess we could say it as the tech revolution, how tech, social media, that space, all of that is changing how we do veterinary medicine as a profession. And then one of my biggest challenges is to look at, how do I maintain the veterinary corps and the Army in line with the veterinary profession as a whole, and make sure that those things align, so that we still have great veterinary professionals in the Army that are able to protect the United States with their veterinary medicine, but at the same time are able to, be productive members of the veterinary profession as a whole and continue to move forward.
Yeah, you really are trying to dance two worlds, because you're keeping up with the veterinary profession and you're keeping up with the Army profession and mirroring the two. So you're not even close to being done with your career, but what do you carry with you as what do you carry with you as the most important thing? It's been an amazing career, obviously.
It has been, but it all boils down to, in a military career, I think if you asked me if I had done 20 years in private practice, or if I had done 20 years in the military, I think my answer would still be the same. And it's been the people along the way.
Okay.
So really, veterinary medicine as a profession, yes, it's about animals, and yes, it's about the animals. There's many animals we all can probably go back to that have touched us in our career and been important in our career. But I think by far and away, in any career, it's the people that you've worked with along the way that do that. And I'm very privileged every day to work with such incredible professionals in both the public health space and the veterinary medicine space in the military, that are dedicated. They come in, they work, they're working every day to really be part of that, and because they feel their veterinary medicine is something that is of great value to protecting, really these ideals that we believe in. And I think that's really inspiring to me. It's really unique, and I think that those individuals really are a unique resource for the profession as a whole too, at the same time.
When you think back to your zoo residency, did that help you in encounters when you actually went overseas then? I don't know if you had encounters in Italy, but when you went to Africa, did that help you? Did you learn things in the zoo residency that you used then?
It was actually
deployment?
One of the ones that really comes to mind is I actually got the opportunity to spend time as a part of a expert exchange in Borneo, which was a unique aspect, where we worked and discussed zoo medicine and wildlife management practices with veterinarians in Malaysia, there in Borneo, to really look at things like Asian elephant management and orangutan management and interesting things like that. I will say that's more the exception than the rule.
Okay.
Because as I came into the military, those opportunities, wildlife opportunities, are more regional based on where you are.
Okay.
I also, in my career, I made selections after that kind of put me on a track towards leadership and executive leadership in the service too. But there are memories like that come to mind, those types of thought, those questions where we're actually able to, have exchanges, and definitely something, once again, that I would probably couldn't see myself have doing back when I was in veterinary school, but the Army and the military were an enabler that helped me do that as part of their ongoing mission.
Well, I've got two guests here, as I mentioned on the top of the podcast. Who wants to go first? Shelby?
I'll go first.
Okay, great. So
So, hello, listeners. I am Shelby Friend, Second Lieutenant Friend. I'm actually prior service. I did 8 years in the Guard as a 91 Bravo, which is a wheeled vehicle mechanic. And then I transitioned to the HPSB Active Army for the Army Veterinary Corps for the benefits. I do want to say thank you to Dr. Harris for having me here. This is amazing, being able to meet someone so high up in the chain of command.
And he's normal.
He's a normal person, but it's still kind of scary. So I had a few questions. Some of them you've already answered, but one big question I had is tips for keeping on track with promotion points and being able to promote early in terms of also being in your veterinary career and being immersed in veterinary work. Like, how does that play out? Like, how do they track promotion, I guess?
Okay, well, wait a minute. You may have to. We have a lot of non-veterinary listeners.
Sure.
You might have to say what are we talking about here? I don't understand. Yeah. I'm a non-Army. What are we talking about? Promotion points.
So within each rank, so especially lower enlisted, but it applies to all. You get promotion points in terms of you went to school, you got these classes.
Oh, for what you did.
You earn promotion points that help you get to the next rank either earlier or on time. So it's just kind of like, I guess, almost like a video game in my mind. You know, you got to achieve so many points
Sure.
to get to the next rank.
And you want to get to the next rank.
And
okay,
sometimes
good.
there's specific courses you have to take in between ranks. I believe is that the main?
Sure. No, I can riff
Go
on
ahead.
that. No, absolutely. So promotion so when you kind of bears a little bit of background, then we'll answer your question. So promotion in the veterinary service and in the Army is based, when you're an officer, is based on merit, and it's based on time. And you're essentially, you come into a window at a particular time in your career when you're looked at for promotion. So all veterinarians come into the Army and they start at a rank of captain. And captain is the third officer rank. So there's a series of officer ranks, which are looked at. There are generally are college-educated individuals coming out of, most of them come out of ROTC programs or other programs. Officers come into the Army, and they're the leadership of the Army from that. And they start at the lieutenant ranks. So there's first lieutenant, second lieutenant, and then captain. And captain is the rank that all of our military veterinarians come in. Same as our physicians do, same as our dentists do, and likewise. We also have the enlisted ranks, which is what you were before.
Yes.
And the enlisted ranks can be thought of, there are our tradesman ranks. And so they're the individuals where they come into the military and are taught a particular skill or trade, and then they are integrated, and then they run up a different chain. So those are the individuals that start at the rank of private and work their way up, and eventually they become what we call non-commissioned officers or sergeants, and then they work all the way up to sergeant majors. And this is a very unique, really a really unique relationship in the military, because we have the officers who have usually been through college-educated school, and then we have our enlisted ranks who start from a tradesman rank, and you marry those two together and you get a great experience between the two. Our enlisted folks typically do go to college, though, as well.
Yes.
So I mean, they end up, usually as part of educational programs, going to college throughout their career as well. It's very much part of that. And so the officer ranks, though, when you come in the military as an Army officer, you start as a captain, and then about at the 6-year mark is going to be your first window to be looked at for the rank of major, which is the next rank up. And you're selected for promotion in the Army based on your performance, so how you've done at your jobs that you've been given, and that's usually quantified on evaluation reports. It's also related to some of the other intangibles, things like schools you've been to or other experiences you may have had, maybe deployments you went on, those types of things. And that's all wrapped up in a big file, and essentially it's looked at by a board of individuals. So we get together a group of senior officers, and they look at all of the officers that are in their window to be promoted, and they then look at all their files, they rank them, and those individuals are ranked from 1 to 20, 1 to 25, and then we say, okay, based on the numbers, the first 10 are going to be promoted, and those are the ones that get selected and then ascend to the next rank. And that happens again all the way up to the next rank after major is lieutenant colonel, and then the rank after that is colonel, which is what I am now, and then you get into the general officer ranks after me. And so, but generally speaking, each of those boards works in that same way. And you're exactly right. There are specific schools that you have to do along the way to get promoted in the Army.
Army schools?
Army schools,
Okay.
too.
Like your war
college was one.
college
Absolutely.
that you went to. Okay.
So some of these schools, like for example, and that hints at what the point you made earlier, Donna, which is one of the hardest things for, I think, veterinarians in the military to do is to really juggle the two professions they're in at the same time. You're in the profession of veterinary medicine,
Right.
and you're also in the profession of arms. And each of those have their own professional requirements. And sometimes they compete, sometimes they marry up nicely. It's just the way the nature of the service is. But so there's certain, for example, military classes you have to do to generally get promoted to the next rank as you go along as well. And those are classes that are usually very heavy on learning not just how the military does things, but also leadership as well. And a rank promotion in the military is not just based on the amount of time and the fact that you've been there. It's have you demonstrated the qualities to be a leader? Because as you go up, you get to lead more and more people.
Right.
Because I now lead, over 2,000 people as part of the Army Veterinary Service. I also lead another 600 individuals as part of Public Health Command East, and so they want to make sure that you've met those wickets along the way.
See the merits of a leader and essentially know that you can handle the next step up and taking the bigger group on bigger
Absolutely.
responsibilities.
And I think that's one of the things, whether you spend just 3 years in the Army Veterinary Corps or 30 years in the Army Veterinary Corps, one of the things that I hope is that you leave the Veterinary Corps as a better leader than when you entered it. And so that leadership is a huge focus of, it's been a huge focus of the military for generations, and that's one of the things I think is really important.
Well, speaking of generations and leadership in your current roles, you're already kind of top dog in terms of veterinary world and Army and the veterinary. So where do you see your career going from here? Because you seem to be what we call a lifer in terms of military. You're making a whole career out of being in the military. And where do you see your next steps going?
That's a question that's very much for the individual. So I can really only answer, when I answer that question, I'm answering for me and not really for every veterinary. Because every veterinary in the Army has a different plan. But one of the things, as you know, is after service in the military, so I'm eligible for retirement after 20 years. I've already been in 22, so I've stayed in a little longer. But and new folks coming in like yourself, when you come in, you have the opportunity as well to do something called the blended retirement system, where you can retire after 20 years, but you can also pay money into what amounts to essentially almost a 401k program that you can take with you too. Right. And so, but that 20-year mark is kind of an inflection point for many officers in their career. So I chose to stay in a little bit longer to do some of the unique positions like this that I've had the opportunity to do. And so at some point in the future, I will retire. And I will, but I'll retire from the Army, but I just don't see myself, going, blissfully into the night. I probably will want to find another avenue of veterinary medicine and another place I go. I feel after a career in the Army, I'm pretty strong in leadership. But many years ago, I decided that I wanted to be on that executive leadership path. So to be honest, I haven't done a lot of clinical medicine in the last decade. And so if I wanted to go back into clinical medicine, I feel like I could, but I would probably need a little bit of CE and some continuing, training to do so. But certainly, any avenue that would look at like leadership in veterinary medicine as well is important. One of the other great roles that I have as the Veterinary Corps Chief is I get to serve as a delegate to the AVMA. And so I get to represent the interests of the uniformed services, us, the Public Health Service, and other government services in uniform with the AVMA and to the veterinary profession as a whole, which is also kind of another way to look at these things too. And I find that really interesting as well.
I didn't know that you got to do that, so that's great.
Yeah, really, really unique.
That connection is really good. Great.
One last question for you.
Of course.
And I'll pass it over to Selena here. So I am a dual degree student, doctorate of veterinary medicine, but also the online food safety program here at Michigan State. And with me coming into the Army Veterinary Corps with that public health background a little bit more enforced, does that preset people like me on a track towards the food safety aspect of veterinary medicine, or does it still leave the clinical door open so if people were still interested in doing both paths?
Sure. No, great question. So, first of all, I will say that the food safety program here at Michigan State it's one of the programs I'm very proud of as the Army Veterinary Corps chief, because we have sent many veterinarians back to school here, as well as our warrant officers. So we have a cohort of individuals in the veterinary service who are not veterinarians; they're warrant officers, and essentially what they are food safety specialists. They usually have advanced degrees, BSs or MSs in food safety, food science, and they are our technical experts when it comes to the side of our mission, which is related to what we call food protection, which is essentially protecting food both from intentional adulteration and unintentional adulteration. So food safety across the spectrum. So having a degree like that, also, one of the things we're really big on in the Army right now is what's called talent management. And so when we have individuals that have special skills, we want to know about it so that we can help marry those skills up with places in the military where there's good opportunities for you.
Right.
And so if that is something you're particularly interested in, we would look to say, hey, that's something to make known to our leaders now. And we can work with that to maybe talent manage you in your first assignment to a job maybe where those skills can be used in food safety. Every job in the military is a little bit different. And so each job, some jobs are 80% animal medicine and some are 20% food safety. Some are, more 50-50. It depends on where they are in the country and what the mission of that part of the department is. But generally speaking, though, you do not, first of all, that degree does not pigeonhole you and say you will do that in the military. Absolutely not.
Great.
And it's also really to be a complete veterinary officer in the beginning. We don't put your eggs in one basket at the beginning. That military veterinary practice, you're going to be doing animal medicine and food safety and public health in some capacity wherever you are.
Okay.
And there's opportunities as well. I mean, we definitely need your clinical skills up to date, because when we deploy, for example, when Army veterinarians go to war, God forbid we actually have to go to war again. When we do that, we're going to have individuals who are both consummate food protection officers who know that mission and are able to treat military working dogs and do animal medicine in a combat zone too. And so those are important things.
It's nice to know that it doesn't pigeonhole you.
Does not.
The career field is still very open and you still have vast opportunities. I think I'll hand it over to Selena so she can ask her questions.
Hello, I'm Selena Gomez, Second Lieutenant Gomez. I also just want to say thank you to Dr. Harris for inviting me on the podcast for this incredible opportunity. I am someone who am coming into the Army Veterinary Corps with zero military background, and which leads me to my first question, like coming into the Corps as a leader, what are your best suggestions for gaining the trust of the people that we are, the soldiers that we are leading, and how do we become a successful leader?
Absolutely. So the military realizes that when they bring medical professionals in from medical school, in all types of medical school, that you may or may not have had any military background. So first thing is you shouldn't fear the military, or should you feel like you're expected to know everything about the Army when you first come in. Part of what our job is to, part of those first year of your military career in what we call that first year graduate program, plus your initial training, is to really bring you into the Army culture and let you know what the culture is about. Because the Army and really the military itself is kind of a unique subculture in American culture anyway, right? It's we have our own traditions, we have our own acronyms, we have our own like secret lingo on certain things, right? Where we talk about
You're the cool club.
Yeah, like we talk about and we have like uniforms, we have standards, those things are extremely important. And so we all of that is something that we bring you into when you come in. So when you first come in, you'll go to something called the Direct Commission course, which is just a course that teaches you about essentially how to wear the uniform right, how to salute when and when not to salute, military customs and courtesies, we call it, and some of the basics of how the military operates in terms of forms and chains of command and that kind of thing. And then you attend what's called the Basic Officer Leader course, which is a course that's run out of San Antonio, Texas, Joint Base San Antonio, which is really the hub for Army medicine in terms of training. That's where all of our Army medical folks, doctors, dentists, PAs, you'll be there with all those medical skills for the first time, and you're all learning the basics of Army medicine and how Army medicine supports the greater mission of the Army in that area. And so those are all places where you really get into and you learn kind of the Army culture as well. So other than that, there's, really, as probably is always a cautionary tale, there's a lot of misinformation about what the service is like on social media and disinformation as well. And so my best advice to you to learn is to talk, first of all, to as many military members, both retired and otherwise, and also as many current veterinary officers as you possibly can, because they'll give you, the reality of what's happening, in this really unique kind of niche area of veterinary medicine. But it's nothing to be feared. I think the military, we in the medical professions, we're there to support the warfighters. We're in a supporting role in our role as veterinarians in the military. Not that we don't deploy, not that we don't go to war. We absolutely do. But we are there to ensure that those who are out there in combat are actually supported as best as possible. And part of that is learning about the culture and being part of it. And the other part is how do you fit into that overall scheme and one of the biggest bureaucracies in the world. So it's a unique transition.
You've talked a lot about your unique opportunities that you've gotten through being a veterinarian in the Army. What are some other opportunities within the Army as a veterinarian that you see maybe people or soldiers don't take advantage of enough?
Yeah, so I mentioned before that long-term health education training program. I think that's one of the best programs for Army veterinarians, because the opportunity is there for you to get specialty training. You're getting paid as an Army officer the entire time, so you're not you're not getting paid as a resident. You're getting paid as an Army officer. Mm-hmm. And you maintain all your Army benefits at that same time, and those years count towards retirement. You're basically, the Army almost gives you kind of a 3-year sabbatical to go off and learn a trade, in veterinary medicine, a specialty trade, and come back. And those are all credentials you take with you when your military service is done. So, I mean, it's not like you stop being a surgeon or you stop being a PhD when it's done. No, that is earned by you, and it's earned at a academic institution or military program, and you keep it and you continue with it. And so that's I think a really important piece, is the Army offers a lot of great educational opportunities that way. And what the payback is for the Army is, once you're complete with your program, you owe the Army a certain number of years of service afterwards, usually somewhere between 3 to 5. But it just depends on the nature of the program. But that's a calculation you can make, conversation with your family. That's a great opportunity. Other opportunities, I think the Army also offers, we're exploring a lot of opportunities for working interagency and with some of our partners. We, as the military, like I mentioned, we're part of the National Veterinary Defense, and so we're actively always looking for ways to collaborate with other agencies that protect this country through their veterinary medicine. So that would be agencies like USDA and FDA and CDC. Places that are integrated across that, because ultimately, if there's a threat to our homeland from a veterinary perspective, it's going to be all of us that have to come together to do it, to protect it, just because of the sizes of our organizations. And so we are looking at opportunities for that. That's an important one. And really, in the military, I think there's really great opportunities to really do something, like I said, to grow as a person as well. And those are just taking an assignment overseas, learning you're doing veterinary medicine, but you're doing it in Germany or Italy like I did, or in a completely different culture from where you are, in Korea or in Japan, somewhere where those types of opportunities are available. I think that is one of the most basic opportunities that we have, that some people, for whatever reason, in the veterinary corps shy away from. They may not want to go overseas, or they think, oh no, I just want to stay home. I think that doing that is a transformative experience for everyone who does it, regardless of whether you were considering that at the beginning or not. So some of those opportunities I think are really important and things to definitely look into if you're considering a career in the military veterinary medical area.
Thank you for that information. I had no idea that the Army, like as a veterinarian, if you choose to step away for a couple of years to get a PhD or pursue residency, that you still get paid your Army salary. So kind of following up with that, are there any, like, I know that you had mentioned that the Army themselves like have a pathology residency and you got yours in zoological medicine. So is there any like residency that would not be like permissible to pursue?
Sure. The first thing I'll qualify though, just to make sure I'm putting out is you don't technically step away from the Army while you're doing that, because like, for example, when I did my residency here, the Army still made me take a physical fitness test and so I had to go meet up with the ROTC, the Spartan Battalion over here, and take my physical fitness test. They make sure you're still doing Army standards. So that's one piece of it. So we look at the programs that the Army offers are programs that are of need to the department and programs that are of need to the military veterinary medicine as a whole. So, for example, we offer, if you think about military working dogs, we offer programs in internal medicine, radiology, critical care, and surgery, those skills that we need to really maintain those military working dogs downrange. We've recently been offering programs in sports medicine as well, looking at those types of things. We offer programs in public health because a large contingent of Army veterinary officers work in the public health realm. And then we offer programs in the research and development field, looking at, pathology, lab animal medicine, and also research-based PhDs. So certain programs, for example, we don't offer because we don't have a large need for that skill, or that skill is met by collaboration with our other veterinary colleagues in the private sector. So things that come to mind are like ophthalmology is one, or dermatology is another one. Those are skills where we get those skills and we work with those skills by pulling in other professionals to help us, because based on our population and the cohorts we have, we just don't have a high demand for them. And there's always a cost associated too. And so, however, though, the main thing is if you have a particular area of interest in veterinary medicine, if you have a particular scope that you're really, really passionate about, bring that up to those folks and bring it up to us and let us know, because we are willing to entertain, new programs and new ways of doing things. Just this summer, we're going to graduate for the first time in a long time a equine specialist from our program. So we have an individual who went through the equine medicine residency at Virginia Tech, and they'll be coming out this summer, and they're going to be placed in a position overseeing some of the military horse programs and doing those types of things as well. And so it's very unique. And like we mentioned in the podcast, as things change, as things move in the future, the skills that we may need in military veterinary medicine may also change with it. Sports medicine is a great one. About 10 years ago, we didn't have any sports medicine individuals in the military. And as that part of the veterinary profession grew, we realized that was a skill that we needed to start incorporating into our military working dog welfare programs and things in order to keep the dogs performing at their best. And so really, like I said, things continue to change and go that way as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question. When a veterinarian is stationed in different bases around the U.S., are they then required, if they do clinical medicine, to get licensed in that state?
Very interesting. So if you are, and actually we just got last year in the National Defense Authorization Act, we just got relief from this for certain circumstances. So first of all, when you are a veterinarian in the Army, you're a federal veterinarian. As long as you are doing a federal mission or federal skill, you can do that on any military installation in the inventory, and you can only have to be licensed in one state. So, for example, I was licensed in Michigan. I was never licensed in California, but I was able to practice at that first duty site at Fort Irwin, California, without any hindrance. Now, if I wanted to go off the installation to either work at a small animal clinic or do some spays and neuters at the shelter, then I would have to have a license for the state of which I was in to do that. There's been one additional thing that we were given relief in, though, be part of that National Defense Authorization Act, which is now anytime we're doing anything federal in the United States. So if they send me off of the base to do a military mission, for example, in the community or doing a military mission at a particular place, now I am protected with reciprocity. And so I can do that military mission anywhere in the U.S. with a license in any state, and I don't have to be licensed in that state.
Okay, but if you were if you decided to volunteer on your day off,
right,
outside the base, outside the community, you would have to be licensed in that state.
Correct.
Likely.
Yeah,
likely
correct.
You would. Okay,
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate this. I do have a couple questions I ask all of our guests.
Oh, wonderful.
First of all, what's the best advice you were ever given? Do you remember at all?
Oh my goodness, I've had so many incredible mentors, both in this profession and out, and it really, oh man, that's when in terms of best advice that ever been given. That's a very tough question because there's been so many people. You don't end up where I am in the Army Veterinary Service without many people along the way, from the soldiers I've been with, from all of the senior leaders and officers I've worked with, helping me, along the way. And so to put it down to just one person or one thing is very tough to do.
Tough.
Especially individuals even here, at this institution too, at Michigan State. So I really, your career after this point is not your own. You've had so many people help you, both family and outside of family, that it's just a very, very hard thing to pinpoint, one phrase or one moment, I guess.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come in person and for meeting Shelby and Selena.
That's wonderful.
And they've loved the excuse to get out of class. All right, so thank you very much.
No, thank you, Donna, and thanks to everybody out there. Go green.
Go white.
Thank you all for joining us for this episode of Extraordinary Vets, brought to you by Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. This is Extraordinary Vets, where every career tells a story. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.